You can't read my hieroglyphics?
No.
I can see.
Okay, well, good afternoon and morning to some of you on the West Coast. Welcome to our Stages of Change and Motivating Clients webinar. We'll be joined today by Laverne Hayes and Lamar Leggins. They are from Gay Men's Health Crisis, and I'm your usual hostess, Jessica Flaherty. And so just to give you guys some heads up about how we're going to be running this webinar. So we have, we're able to record the webinar, and we're going to have this available for folks after we're done, for anyone who was not able to join us or who would like to review the information. The recording will be made available to everyone via our Projects Basecamp. You can feel free to use the computer or telephone audio to hear our webinar. But just so you know, just to minimize background noise, all of you are currently and will remain muted through the duration of the webinar. If you would like to comment or if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat box. You can just click the chat button. It's on the bottom black bar of Zoom, so you should be able to see that. And just click the chat button for that. And when we say, if you want to comment, that's just to say things like, I can't hear you, or, you know, speak louder, or if there's anything else that you might be experiencing related to technical difficulties. And then if you have questions for any of the presenters, please use the Q&A feature. So that's also at the bottom bar in your Zoom screen. And we will be collecting questions throughout the entirety of the content for this webinar, and then we'll be answering all of the questions at the end. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in there at any point, and we will have a queue ready, and then we will read off your questions to the presenters and answer them from there. So that's me, Jessica Flaherty. I'm your Senior Program Manager for the Evaluation Technical Assistance provider at BU, and we are also joined today by the wonderful Laverne Hayes. And so Laverne unfortunately did not send us a picture of herself, but just so you know, we've discussed this already, and if you need an image, Halle Berry would play her in a movie. And then we're also joined by Lamar Leggins, and he is the Social Work Case Manager at Gay Men's Health Crisis. Many of you have not had an opportunity to meet Lamar yet. He is their newest staff member, team member there, and he's fantastic. And he would be played by Taye Diggs, if you needed image in your mind. So what we're going to be talking about today, or we're going to be obviously talking about the stages of change and the trans-theoretical model. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Talk a little bit about what we mean when we say that, and some of the history of where this approach comes from. We're also going to talk about how you might want to think about assessing and addressing clients' needs based on the stage that they're in when they come to you, and that they might move into as you work with them through your interventions. And then we're going to spend a good portion of the time also discussing the components of GMHC's model, because they utilize a stages of change-based approach integrated into their intervention, and actually also their work with multi-site evaluation. So just some background on the stages of change model, and many of you already know or have heard about stages of change and understand this model. And so we're not by no means going to attempt to do a comprehensive training on this right now. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background to catch people up who maybe, for whom this might be a little bit new. And for those of you who are hearing this for the very first time, we are going to provide some resources at the end so that you could continue your learning on the stages of change model. You can feel free to take care of that either on your own and explore that on your own, or if you would like additional support with that, can of course always reach out to us here at the ETAP, and we'd be happy to connect you with other training resources if you'd like to further your learning. So what is the stages of change model? So it's used interchangeably. It's actually called the trans-theoretical model, but you know, for a lot of reasons, we just call it the stages of change model because that seems to be what's sort of in the vernacular a little bit more. People are more comfortable with saying that. Trans-theoretical is kind of doesn't match necessarily the work that we're actually doing on the ground with clients. And then also, you'll see as we kind of take you through this, it's also a pretty transparent approach that we take with clients while using the trans-theoretical model. So it's great to be able to just sort of name the thing that you're doing with them, like thinking about their stages of change and moving them through that. So it was developed in the late 70s originally to determine factors of smoking cessation. So this was utilized for folks who were either thinking about quitting smoking or those for whom smoking was not necessarily something, or quitting smoking was not necessarily something they were thinking of, but others were encouraging them to move through thinking about quitting smoking. So it's got two elements: the decision making of the individual, which is one of the reasons why we think it has great and strong application to the communities that we're working with, because the decisions exist along a continuum that are determined by the individual. And then the making changes, the changes themselves are actually an intentional process, and they have these stages, or they have steps from one to the next, and they're planful, and they incorporate a lot of outside factors as well. So something to just always keep in mind, what's really important when thinking about utilizing the trans-theoretical model is that behavior change is not something that happens quickly. A lot of times, I think that just in life, we can expect that somebody is going to, if there are behaviors that are deeply ingrained and approaches that people have to dealing with challenges in their life or anything like that, these are things that are deeply ingrained and are really difficult to change. So that does not lend itself to something changing very quickly. So those changes, and especially if these are habitual or if they involve any sort of addiction, are going to be cyclical. And so that we're going to explain the cycle as we move forward. But it's very important to recognize that as we move through these stages of change, that oftentimes they can move in different directions. So you can make progress, but then also have to take a step back. And so we'll go through what that looks like. So why are we using it? Why is it used so much, so thoroughly by, especially by the HIV prevention and treatment community? Well, I think one of the major reasons is because it's really client-centered, and the work that we're doing, especially with clients who are managing their HIV disease within the context of unemployment and homelessness, it's really needs to be a client-centered approach. And as I said before, our folks from GMHC are going to be able to articulate how they integrate that really well in their intervention. So it's client-centered, but you know, we also have, as practitioners, have a place in this process as well. So it's not just that all of a sudden somebody decides they're going to make a change and then just figure out how to manage it themselves. This is a model that works in collaboration with with a practitioner, with a social worker, with a navigator, with a community health worker. And so that person is able to provide support and guidance so that the client can be supported in deciding the change that needs to be made, that the client can be supported in deciding the steps that will take to make that change, and that the client will decide what that timeline would look like for when the change will happen or when they're done making the change. So this is just a really great little graphic so that we can see that it's a process. Excuse me. So here's our cyclical slide, so you can really see what we mean by the cycle, and also we could even really add some arrows that go in other directions, so you could turn them around. It's multi-directional, but if we take it from the top, we look at the process as being that people come to us pre-contemplation, so not necessarily even thinking about change, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. So this is the cycle. I'm going to go through what each of them, definition for each of them, and how to identify people who are in these stages in just a moment. But again, this is multi-directional, and you can think about moving from one phase or one stage to another, depending on where people are at. And we will talk a little bit about relapse and what the role of relapse is in this cycle as well. So the first stage is pre-contemplation. So how do we identify people who are in pre-contemplation? So some of the characteristics include not being aware of a need to change. And if we think about it in terms of smoking, as it was initially utilized, so you're not considering that there's any need for you to quit smoking. You like smoking, it works for you, it's helping you reduce stress, or it's aiding in any kind of other behaviors that especially related to stress or eating or any of those kinds of things. And so people have a lot of decisions, or a lot of reasons rather, why they might want to be continuing to smoke. And so they're not thinking about it. And then for us, it's important to have a couple of ideas about what the techniques are for working with people who are in a pre-contemplation stage. So what part of that looks like is to work with the client to just evaluate what their current behaviors are, and just encourage them to think about smoking. So if you're working with someone to move them into thinking about quitting or changing their smoking behaviors, you might want to say things like, what is it about smoking that you like? Is there anything about smoking that you don't like? You certainly want to validate that they might not be interested in changing, because this is client-centered, which means we don't have judgments. We don't have a problem with where they're at. We just simply accept what they're telling us as far as what their interest is. And then we reinforce that if there is any change, the best decision is really going to be sitting with the client themselves, because it needs to be a process that they have agreement in, or else it's not going to really move forward. The second stage is contemplation. So thinking about it, right? The characteristics, if you're thinking about how to identify somebody who's in contemplation mode, they're kind of ambivalent to change. So ambivalent means that it doesn't mean yes, like absolutely, I'm raring to go, but it doesn't mean no either. It's not somebody who's pre-contemplative and saying, I'm not interested in changing any of my smoking behaviors. They are perhaps wrestling with it, but not necessarily. They could just perhaps see both sides of it. Like they could perhaps see like, oh, I do notice that when I get on the bus and I sit next to somebody who's a non-smoker, they sort of tend to give me a little turn up of the nose, and that makes me feel bad about how I smell to others, or something like that. So they're not necessarily, people who are in contemplation mode, they're not necessarily thinking about changing in the next few weeks. This is something that they could maybe imagine, but they're not really thinking too much about it. And then some of the techniques for working with them is to evaluate some of their potential, the changes that you might want to have them address in some of their current behaviors. So like, you know, asking them, well, if it's challenging for you to get on the bus and you don't like the sort of dirty looks that you get from folks, what potentially might you want to change about that? What would that look like? Maybe you don't smoke right before you get on the bus or something like that. And then you can explore the pros and cons of that. Well, somebody could say, well, actually, I don't think I want to stop smoking before I get on the bus because it's really stressful for me for whatever reason. So I'd like to have a cigarette before I get on the bus. So that's probably not what I'm going to be changing. Or you can see the pros, like actually it really stresses me out when people look at me funny. So maybe I will think about not having a cigarette right before I get on the bus. So these are behavior changes. They're not necessarily like here you're quitting or not quitting. This is like, I'm thinking about things that I could adjust in my life. So you also want to, you know, identify some of the positive outcomes that could potentially come with modifying or changing a little bit of the behavior. You know, like if I don't have a cigarette right before I get on the bus and people aren't giving me funny looks, positive outcome is I'm so much less stressed out when I take the bus into, you know, into the city. You also want to continue to reinforce, and this is going to be in every single slide, but you want to reinforce that the decision is theirs, that they're the ones that have the control and the power over this kind of the situation. So preparation and identifying people who are in this stage, you'll notice that they are testing the waters with some very small or similar changes. So if they're looking at, I really want to quit smoking, they're thinking about something on a larger scale and that they're planning to make this change soon. So they're saying like, you know what, next month, I am going to not smoke in the house. I'm going to only smoke outside. And that's a really significant change for someone, especially that they've named the timing, like the time frame for when they think they're going to implement this change, but also really interrupts the cycle that they're in with this particular behavior. If they're used to if there's someone who's used to smoking inside of the home or inside of wherever they happen to live, and they now are thinking they're going to smoke outside only, that's a really big change for the amount of cigarettes that they would be smoking, the amount it would be disrupting a lot of habitual patterns, and it also changes their experience with any addiction they might be experiencing to nicotine. So some techniques for working with these folks is that you definitely want to ask them, since they're already thinking, you might want to get real curious in these moments and say things like, well, okay, so what do you think are going to be the biggest troubles, the biggest like obstacles in your way? And that they might say something like, well, it's going to be really cold out. That is not going to be the case for everybody in every place. In San Diego, for instance, maybe they're not going to be as worried about being cold, but up here in the Northeast, somebody might say, well, it's going to be real cold. And so I'm afraid I might break down and just have a cigarette in the house because I can't go outside, it's too freezing. And so you want to assist them with like problem solving some of that stuff. Well, what do you think you want to do in those moments? Do you want to call somebody? So that goes to the next piece, like encourage them building a support framework. So people within their lives, so family members and friends and whoever it is, or people that they live with, whatever, that can support them in those moments and help them to stick to their plans. Also encouraging small steps. So if somebody says, actually, I might just, in that case, if it's really cold, I might allow myself to have one cigarette in the house. And encourage that and be like, that sounds great. You're easing right into it. It's a small step, and that's a win. And then you want to, again, reinforce that the client, it's their decision and that they have the skill and they are establishing the support to make this change and that they're the ones that are in control here. And then there's action. So action is people doing it. They're making the change. They're practicing the change for a certain period of time. So this is also a great way for people to say, like, I'm going to try this for 30 days. So in 30 days, I'm going to start to smoke only outside, and I'm going to practice this for a specific amount of time, like 30 days. It gives them an opportunity to really experience success with things and see that there's an end point. In case it's really too difficult, and that's usually very helpful for folks to sort of have that endpoint. Some of the techniques for working with people is to help them think about ahead of time what are some slip moments and then ways to avoid them. Again, kind of pulling on those skills that were talked about in the previous step, and then also pulling on the support network that they've built ahead of time. You want to boost some of self-efficacy for being able to change and deal with those tough moments. So really helping people understand that, again, this is why you're reinforcing with them that they're the ones that are in the driver's seat, they're the ones that have control, and that they have built all the tools and have the self-efficacy needed to actually continue with this and deal with when it's too cold to go outside to have a cigarette, or when you're having that craving. They figured out how to manage those moments. And then discuss the feelings of loss in the context of the positives gained from the change. This is super important because people are doing behaviors for a certain reason. So if somebody's smoking, there's probably a lot of reasons why a lot of positives for them, right? If it's helping them manage another addiction, if it's helping them manage stress, if it's helping them manage eating disorders, if it's helping them manage any kinds of things, nausea, weight gain, any of the things that people might be utilizing smoking for, or utilizing or doing any kind of behavior that's resulting in negative health outcomes. There's a lot of reasons for that, and so they're going to experience a loss. And so talking about how you can balance out the losses and really by really elevating the positives gained is a very good space, is a really good approach to working with people who are in the action phase. So it's a lot of talking about it, the positives and the losses. And then maintenance. So characteristics of people who are in maintenance are they're continuing their commitment to being in that change. They've already done it for quite some time. They're into 6 months. They're beyond 6 months. They're maybe into approaching a year. The technique for working with people in maintenance is not to ignore them or to say like, good job, you're all done. Because what we know is that in this phase, this maintenance phase, and in fact in any of them, there is this piece of relapse. And relapse is kind of a loaded term, especially for people in addictions communities and stuff. So it's not necessarily in the framework that we're presenting now, but it's an important piece of the step. Also, there's no one specific place to put relapse, because you could just sort of relapse or take a step back, or perhaps not achieve everything that you're looking for at any point in this cycle. And so in maintenance, one of the reasons why you want to continue to work with people is because you want to help them mitigate the likelihood that they might have a slip and go backwards or have a relapse with the behavior. So planning, you want to plan for continued support. So how often are they going to meet you or other people or their support network? Reinforce all of the rewards that they're getting from making that change, from the I don't get dirty looks anymore because I don't smell like cigarettes, to the I can breathe better, to whatever else it might be. And then just discuss how they're going to cope with a relapse if it does happen. So in other words, how are they not going to beat themselves up about it? How are they not going to just, sort of give into the relapse and just say, well, I guess once a smoker, always a smoker. I'm always going to be this way, even though I don't want to. I just can't handle it. It's stronger than me. And, all of those things contribute to people staying in their relapse because they feel badly about themselves. They feel like they're a failure. They feel like they haven't, done a good job. And so discussing ahead of time, not beating yourself up about relapse is a really important piece of maintenance. So I'm going to now, that was just sort of our, again, mini going over of behavior change theory and sharing that with you all. What's really the prime stars here are Laverne and Lamar, and so I'm going to hand it over to them now so that they can discuss how they use the stages of change model at Gay Men's Health Crisis, or GMHC. And they might be on mute, so I'm going to remind them to unmute themselves.
We did.
Good.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm Laverne Hayes. I'm the Director of Intake and Coordinated Care here at GMHC. And Project Health is under my portfolio. Next.
Hello, my name is Lamar Leggins. I'm the social work case manager for Project Health.
Okay, so at GMHC, we use the stages of change model throughout our agency, starting with our intake department. When our clients come in, the intake specialists interview them. Of course, they have assessments that they have to check off, but during the conversations with them, I can give you an example. I have one intake staff that is, shall I say, wears her heart on her sleeve. So when I came to the department, she was the first one that I immersed in deeply with motivational interviewing so that she could stay on topic with the clients and not go off on tangents. And then we have our transitional case coordination department. That's for our clients that don't qualify for Medicaid and need case management services. Generally, that caseload tends to be a lot of undocumented clients when they first get to New York City. And then we have health home case management, Medicaid-based, that uses motivational interviewing also. We have our mental health and substance abuse clinics that use stages of change to help guide their clients with whatever situation they're going through, be it addiction or harm reduction, because we are a harm reduction agency. Our mental health, you know, when clients come in and they're not taking the medication, stages of change and motivational interviewing are used to get to the root of the problem with the client. Next.
As you can see, our present Project Health program flow, it starts with recruitment, which is done through enrollment sessions, outreach at on-site programs, external referrals from partner agencies as well. We also do enrollment, which includes our Eureka assessment, which is an assessment tool that is based on stages of change. And we also have our consent and survey, our comprehensive assessment, which is the psychosocial assessment, care plan goal setting, which is based on the results of the psychosocial assessment. And our clients are separated into two different tracks, readiness and action tracks, based on their level of change. Next. So as you can also see, these are our program eligibility requirements. I believe it's similar for all of us. You know, condition 1, 18 years of age or older, condition 2, HIV status, condition 3, housing, condition 4, employment. Next. So our enrollment process includes a referral form, eligibility questionnaire, a HIPAA, and our Eureka assessment, which is originally from the University of Rhode Island. It's their change assessment. It's been modified for us to use for employment and housing purposes. The scores are then calculated, which determines if clients are in the pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, or maintenance stages of change regarding their housing or employment status. Next. The psychosocial assessment, which is our comprehensive assessment, is very important. It actually includes the OARS 4 strategies of motivational interviewing in the early stages of change, which are open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summarization. It helps us to get more of an idea of other things going on with the client that may affect their ability to obtain housing and employment. Along with the mental health and substance use history, we also administer a GAD-7, PHQ-9, and PC-PTSD screen to see if there are any mental health challenges that the client may be facing. Also, DAS-10 and Audit-C are administered to see if the client is having any sort of substance abuse related challenges that may affect their ability to obtain employment and housing. This is also important because if they may present as being in a certain level of change for employment and housing, we can also see if they are in another stage of change regarding substance use or mental health and medication adherence. Next. So we have two different tracks that our clients are separated into. The readiness track, which includes individual counseling, referrals, readiness support groups, and the orientation sessions, and our action track, which includes our transitional benefits counselor group, linkages to housing, employment, and other services, psychoeducational groups, and action track support group. Our readiness support group actually matches the pre-contemplation, contemplation, and preparation phases, while our action track matches the action, maintenance, reducing relapses, and termination phases. Next. In addition to myself and Laverne, we also have a transitional benefits counselor full-time and a peer care navigator part-time. They assist me with co-facilitating the action track and the readiness track support groups. The transitional benefits counselor has been very important in our work because he speaks Spanish and he assists us with, the budget counseling, individual psychosocial support, benefits, transition plans, and employment-related supports, along with resume review, also referrals to Access VR and other on-site programs. Our peer care navigator does a PSN group, which allows clients to come in to share their own personal strategies regarding obtaining housing and employment. It also gives them the time to process any sort of frustrations they might be having regarding the search for either. Next.
Okay, the populations we serve the 5 boroughs in New York City, undocumented, over 18, looking for employment. No, I'm just looking at you. I want to give you an example of a challenging case. I think we have about 4 undocumented with us. One of them is a female in their 50s, late 50s, looking for work. I receive information all the time from different vendors for employment or sites that are holding job training programs. So it was one for a home attendant, and she applied for it, but because she was undocumented, she wasn't eligible for it. But while she was there, she met the director, and the director had a business where she paid clients off the books for housekeeping. So she was able to get a position. She's making, I want to say it's $15 an hour. She's doing 20 hours a week. So she got that, and we were able to house her through our HOPWA program. Then we have another client that I referred to the HOPWA program. I'm giving you all kinds of clients that we refer to the HOPWA program. And when we talked before about motivational interviewing, the client never reported any type of mental health diagnosis or anything. And when he did his interview for HOPWA, then it turned out he had a past suicide attempt. And it was a shock to me. I'm like, wow, you never said it. He's interacting with the peer navigator, the transitional benefits counselor, and then boom, here it's those little things that the clients don't tell you that are barriers to placing them, and they don't even realize it when you're having a conversation. You need to be upfront and truthful, or otherwise we can't truly help you. And that particular client that had the past suicide just a few weeks ago, he was at the agency and presented the same thing. And with Lamar's quick action, we were able to de-escalate him with the assist of our mental health department. Housing in New York City is very expensive. And if you've never been to New York City, we're kind of spread out. Even though we're small, we're spread out. And everybody wants to live in Manhattan because it's the center of everything. You can get up in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and go somewhere to a store that's open. So everybody wants to be in Manhattan, even me. But I tell my clients I want Manhattan, but I live in the Bronx where I can afford to live. So using stages of the change and motivational interviewing helps us to, guide the client, because clients get frustrated. This is the age of instant gratification, and I want it now. And they want housing, and they may have been in a shelter 6 months, may have been in there a year, or going from shelter to shelter. And when they put up barriers of, I just want Manhattan, and there's nothing in Manhattan that I could get them, then they get frustrated and they start hopping agencies to agencies, and it still comes back to the same thing. There's nothing available in Manhattan. So we try to work really hard with the clients and get them to, be more open to other areas. One of the difficulties we've been having with our program is the survey portion, which is the most important portion, getting the data into the system. Our agency is going through restructuring right now, and when they did that, they didn't really take into account the availability that I would need for somebody to do the survey portion of it. And because I haven't really had a lot of interactions with the client no more than screening for the program, I've taken on some of those duties so I can get us caught up, because we had a backlog of clients that needed to be assessed, and that puts us, the work that we're doing, I kind of have to slow the momentum of the clients moving forward, because I've got 2 clients that I disenrolled from the program because I housed them before they completed their survey portion. So I'm not getting credit for any of that hard work I did. I'm happy for the client, but I want my work to show. So we're down to, I think, about 10 left that have to be done, and my calendar is full for the next 2 weeks to get those 10 clients in. And going forward, then we'll be able to, with me being completing the surveys, as soon as we enroll a client, then boom, I can stop what I'm doing and complete the survey portion, and then the client can move smoothly through the system. Next. Next.
So one of the benefits of working at GMHC is that we have so many services to support our clients. One of the things that we do when we first enroll a client into Project Health is we connect them with case management, either health home or transitional care coordination. We also have our mental health and substance abuse clinics on site, which definitely use motivational interviewing. Our Recharge program focuses on clients that use crystal meth, and those who want to abstain from it. We also have our on-site Project Rise and Match, which are our employment programs. We have wellness services, our food pantry, trans outreach, and peer support. Our SUNY Attain Lab, where clients can obtain certifications in Microsoft Office. We have our legal services and advocacy, where clients can obtain social services support, and they can also obtain referrals to citizenship assistance and other sorts of legal services. We also have women's care, prevention and support, and housing assistance as well.
I just want, before we go on, under our wellness program, I just want to tout our agency some more. So we offer yoga for the clients, free haircuts, Reiki, acupuncture. They have a gym. We have our SUNY computer lab. They have a little cyber cafe. They can go in there all day long and surf the web to their heart's content. So we try to, once we get them, it's like the Roach Motel. Mm-hmm. Once you get in, you can't get out.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also very important, considering, motivational enhancement. When we have all of these resources here, it's easier for clients to, do the collaborative work with us. Next. Okay.
Our community partners are Fortune Society. Fortune Society's main goal is working with re-entry participants, and they have a very high success rate. We have FedCap that offers employment and vocational rehabilitation. our medical providers are Callan Lord and Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is one of the largest hospital systems in New York City, maybe New York State, because every time I turn around, they're buying another hospital. I think about 7 hospitals have merged with Mount Sinai in the last 2 years or so. Next.
So we are in the process of constantly assessing our program, evaluating our effectiveness. We do strive to implement the stages of change into our outreach and engagement, our assessments, comprehensive case management, ongoing group work, even in terms of the support groups that are co-facilitated by myself and the peer care navigator and the transitional benefits counselor. Those group sessions are focused on, intro to readiness, intro to housing and employment, focusing on support networks, health and well-being, preparing for self-sufficiency. Engagement, needs assessments, maintaining health and wellness, seeking employment, discussing HIV in the workplace, disability accommodations, and also seeking housing.
Next.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for your, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, for your presentation and for telling us all the wonderful stuff about Gay Men's Health Crisis. I went to go visit GMHC on a site visit last year, and all of the stuff that Laverne was just describing is pretty amazing to see. When I was there for the site visit, there was a large, an enormous room where a ton of clients were being served lunch, and it was a joyful, exciting little sort of lunching moment that I got to experience. So thank you so much for sharing even just like a little bit of your programming with us. And I think that we have a few questions that popped up in the Q&A box. And so Marina is here and she's going to ask those questions.
Hi, everyone. So I have 2 questions. And for those of you who do have questions, feel free to still type in your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box if you can't find it. And we will answer those for you. So we actually have 2 questions from Allison Jordan, who is one of our ETAP consultants. The first is, what are the demographics of your client population?
Our current caseload, are you asking, or that the agency serves?
Both, she said.
Okay.
So for the Project Health caseload, we have a lot of individuals who are African American, Latino. We have transgender clients, both trans men and women. We also have a variety of, well, all our clients are HIV positive, of course. Some may not necessarily want employment right away, but they all want housing, definitely.
Okay, I saw Allison's thing about the perception of the agency. Yes, our agency was founded in 1981 by 6 gay white men. A lot of people still think that we only serve the gay community because of the name, and we've thought about changing it, but it's our history, so that's not going to happen. But our doors are open to everyone, men, women.
Our organization also serves negative clients through our health home. So, we have a variety of different clients, positive, negative, all ethnicities, cultures, gender expressions, orientations.
Legal, undocumented.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Young, old.
Sorry, were you going to say something?
I think our oldest client is, yes, for Allison's question, does our demographics match in New York City? Correct. Yes.
And also, how do you get appointments at Callan Lord for clients?
Appointments at Carolyn Lord are pretty easy. Because of our partnership, I just have to call up our coordinator over there, and I'm able to get in. But Carolyn Lord also accepts walk-ins. Anytime our clients are, sick and they need to go to a doctor, we can just send them over. Mount Sinai, our testing center, has also a linkage agreement with them, and we can get a same-day appointments for clients.
Awesome. And then we have a question from Amanda Peters. Given the cyclical nature of change that was presented, do your clients ever move between the readiness track and the action track?
Yes, back and forth, depending on which, if they're tackling housing or employment. Yeah, they start off, they come in, I'm looking for a job. Our rides match our employment department. They get clients and they refer them over, and they may just want to take the SUNY Lab course because that offers Microsoft Office certification. And then when we get to them, it's like, no, I don't really want to work. I just wanted the course. So then it's like, okay, you can take the course, but you're not eligible for my program.
Part of our group curriculum is also budget counseling. In order to sustain an apartment, in permanent housing, you need to be able to budget your money, prioritize your work, your medication regimen. We reinforce that.
And the budget counseling is really good because in New York City, the clients are weaned off of their benefits, so it's not a big hit right off the bat. You move into your apartment, we get you a job, and then next month all the bills are yours to pay, which overwhelms the client and leads to, rent arrears and lost apartments.
Thank you. So we have another question. It's come from Nazreen, and she's asking you all to talk a little bit more about how you utilize the stages of change with regard to the multi-site evaluation. So you and I, or the both of you spoke with me and Marina about this when we were kind of rehearsing the day, rehearsing this webinar. We talked about how there are some clients who are not able to, you go through sort of like assessing what stage of change they're at in terms of changing their behavior from somebody who's not really someone who participates in a research study or who doesn't typically have the bandwidth to follow up and do additional meetings to complete baseline surveys and then follow-up surveys and stuff like that. Can you just talk a little bit more about what we, kind of the things that we went over when discussing how you utilize stages of change with regard to enrolling people in the multi-site?
Okay, so utilizing stages of change, we try to have, bi-monthly contacts with the clients. If you're only contacting your client once a month or whenever you remember the client is going to be lost to contact, and you're really not going to move the client any further in their goal of obtaining housing and employment. So steady contact, consistent contact with the client is key in using motivational interviewing, because then you can ask, okay, so what's going on with you, and then take it from there.
It allows us to also use, the developing discrepancy principle of motivational interviewing, because since we're constantly in contact with our clients, we can see how they're progressing along with their goals. Many times it's not just about housing or employment, it's about the many steps as well that we need to assist clients to get to the eventual goal of housing and employment. So developing discrepancy allows us to assist them with, goal setting and understanding their progression.
Awesome, thank you guys. I think additional questions that folks have that they haven't voiced yet, we've run through the ones that have popped up in the Q&A box so far.
Was that toward us?
No, I was just asking if there were any additional questions. I was just giving a moment to see if there were any other additional questions. but there aren't additional ones that are popping up right now. So I guess I just want to give you all just another opportunity if there was anything else that you thought of wanting to share with us before we moved on to closing out our session here.
Did you get our resource page?
Yeah, we're going to go over that in just a second.
Oh, okay.
I think
All
we
right.
should just do it. We could just do it now.
Oh, okay.
So we have a number of resources. So as I mentioned before, so there's no shortage of resources out there for stages of change or the trans theoretical model. So I really had a hard time narrowing down which ones to share with you. So the first one is actually pretty comprehensive and can actually it actually can direct you also to training in this area. So I thought that might be a good one to share. And then there's just also a published journal article there for folks. If you need help accessing that, just let me know. And then we have GMHC was kind enough to share these the following motivational interviewing links with us. Lamar, did you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I got a lot of the motivational interviewing strategies and principles from the SAMHSA website. They're a great resource. Also, the clinical assessment tools, which I'm guessing you'll see on the next slide, came from there as well.
Right, and so just to remind folks that you use these clinical assessment tools in addition to, as a supplement to determining somebody's stage of behavior change, correct?
Yes, it's just for elaboration, like, for example, if they may have additional substance abuse or mental health challenges, despite being in a certain level of stage of change.
Which I would just have to say is a really wonderful part of the ways in which your departments have integrated over there at GMHC, and it's just a great model that stages of change doesn't exist within a vacuum, right? That there's also multiple ways of assessing someone, including ways that people might be assessed for substance use disorders or other mental health challenges and stuff like that. So the integration of these other validated measures are certainly a benefit to GMHC and their approach, and could certainly be for others as well. It's a great example, and I'm so glad that you guys included this. Oh, do we have a question?
No, well, we did have a question. Nazarene was hoping to get the links that are shared right here, but just so everyone knows, we will be sharing the links on Basecamp along with the slides from today and the recording of the webinar. Yep.
Great. And so it's okay if folks contact you beyond this webinar, correct, Laverne and Lamar?
Yes.
Yes.
So they have graciously volunteered to answer any additional questions you might have, or to talk a little bit more about GMHC's approach, and you can reach them this way through their email addresses right here. Again, these will be shared, so you don't have to take this information down now. And then our final word on stuff here is we have another upcoming webinar. As you know, we offer these webinars pretty much every other month or so. And so our next one is actually scheduled for February 19th, our usual time, 1 to 2:30 Eastern. And we will be discussing immigration and documentation, and well, maybe not everything that comes along with that, but everything that comes along with that we can possibly squeeze in as it relates to our project. Particularly, we're going to integrate some conversation about changes to proposed changes to a lot of things. Let's just say that right now. There are potential changes that impact immigration and documentation for people who fall under the category of public charge in this country that's that could potentially be changed in between now and then. So we'll stay tuned for more for more information as that unfolds. The public charge rule was proposed to change and has accepted questions, or I'm sorry, comments, has accepted comments through December 10th. The 10th of this month. And so we'll see if there are big changes that are coming along after that. And so we might talk quite a bit about what changes in public charge would mean for people who are undocumented immigrants in our programs. So more on that. Stay tuned. Save the date. I just want to say a big thank you to Laverne and Lamar and to GMHC for sharing your great programming with us and for putting together such a great presentation today. So applause all around for you all. And then thank you everyone who has joined us and for your questions. It's been really wonderful to be here with you all today. We will stay on the line if there are any additional questions, but otherwise, I think we'll be signing off in a few. So take care, everyone. Happy holidays.